Greetings, heroes and Force users of all ages, and welcome back to Inside the Tauntaun, a podcast in the multiverse of fandom. As always, I'm Dino Nicandros, and I'm joined today by Alyssa Simmons.
Hi there, people.
And our dear friend Daniel Dawson is on assignment.
Yes.
Today is a very special day in uncharted waters for Inside the Tauntaun. We are talking the Caped Crusader, Batman. In the lead up to the new film, The Batman, opening on Thursday, we're going to give you a crash course into the life and times of one Bruce Wayne. And all of the titles, the films, the TV shows, the video games, all of it. We're going to nerd out about our favorite vigilante. And by God, we're Batman fans. Halloween, Batman.
Oh my gosh. I have been so excited to talk about Batman for a long time. We have talked about doing a sort of Batman for Dummies, Batman retrospective thing for, I think, since we started, honestly.
Well, and we could never justify, I mean, in the early days, we could never justify it because we were Star Wars.
What a perfect time now. We have done some DC. Right? We covered Suicide Squad.
We did.
And so this is really, I guess, only our second DC hero chat.
Yeah, other than, crapping on DC over the course of our Marvel discussions, this is...
Which I think one thing that, even divided Marvel DC fans can agree on is that Batman is awesome and that we've gotten just an incredible plethora of Batman goodness in our lifetime. So
yeah, and I think Batman has always been DC's ace in the hole. So
I think so too.
As poorly as elements of the DC EU have transpired, they still hold claim to maybe the best film or couple of films in superhero genre. So
yeah, I think so too. And I think that it's a really interesting idea. I was talking to my family about this because doing all the research for this episode, and I've read a chunk of Batman comics, so I don't consider myself like a complete novice about Batman and like the origin of Batman as far as the comics go. But it's really incredible, and I'll give you like the full list. But like since Batman came out, originally was, unveiled for the very first time, and he was on a number 27 of Detective Comics in May of 1939 was his first appearance. God. And then, got his own, full-length Batman series beginning in early 1940. It's wild to me that a character that was conceived so long ago is still something that feels relevant and feels like, I don't know, it's a very interesting like psychological thing because even as a kid I was like, I know that there are parts of Batman that are bad. I mean, he kills people. Like, he kills people. And that idea of a vigilante too, I think as a kid, you're kind of like, what? But yeah, there's something really fascinating to me about the idea that this character and almost all of the most popular Batman villains and sidekicks and other characters were introduced in the first year of the comic.
It's nuts. That is nuts. That
Like 1941, all of them appear. Like Joker, Penguin,
yeah.
Poison Ivy, Catwoman. Like literally almost every big Batman character was introduced in the first year of the comics, which is wild.
Well, and he does, like with a few other heroes, he kind of shares a kinship with Captain America in their origins, because the first Batman film in 1940, it was based around World War II propaganda, and Batman was tasked with taking down a Japanese mad scientist in Gotham City. And
is that the one that was in like they released it periodically in theaters? It was kind of episodic in a sense.
A serial series.
Okay. 15 episodes,
and
I think I saw.
Actually, it wasn't. It was 1943, and
Wow. 15 chapter story released periodically in theaters.
And an actor named Lewis Wilson played Batman,
Yes.
and it would be problematic by today's standards, but
Sure.
his nemesis was Japan, and that mirrors Captain America for obvious reasons. That Captain America was a piece of wartime propaganda, and it's interesting to see where we are now, leading up. We're 2 days away from Matt Reeves' new film, and the suspected tone of that movie compared to what to 1943 Batman is truly staggering.
Oh yeah, big time. And that's a pretty common thing, especially with these characters that were introduced in the 40s.
Yeah.
Usually in the, in their different ages as far as like, how Marvel sort of categorizes their time chunks in comics. But sort of starting in the Silver Age of DC, we got to see the Batman who I think is closest to what we see Batman as now. And since there has been so many Batman television shows and movies, we've seen lots of different Batmans and lots of different interpretations of the Tim Burton version, which feels very comic booky in a lot of ways, but still dark.
Quite.
And then of course we've got The Dark Knight, which just went full blown scary times.
Well, yeah, the full-blown scary time, like, this is the world we live in, sort of thing. I mean, it's not a stretch to imagine this.
And I think that and we've chatted about this a little bit. I think we might have talked about it in our Hawkeye breakdowns. But I think that for me, Batman is my favorite non-super ability hero. Yep. Because I think that there's really interesting psychological things that are explored in the Batman stories that in a lot of other DC comics are not. Like it's very dark in a very real way.
Well, and that kind of leads me into a question for you. So given the longevity of Batman having survived all this time, why do you think we've had so many reboots just in our adult life?
Sure, in the last really, 15 years. Sure.
From 2005 was Batman Begins to now. We've now had 3 different kind of big reboots.
Yeah.
Why do you think we accept that? And why do we keep coming back to Batman?
That is a great question. I think that the idea of someone kind of, taking care of the bad guys and doing, vigilante work is a fascinating, and DC I think DC more than Marvel has like the most vigilante type characters.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know if it's a combination of this handsome, brooding character with lots of money and lots of cool gadgets and cars. And, you know, it's like he's like the James Bond of comic book characters. Like, I don't really know exactly, but I can say for me, the things that like keep me always going back to like, oh yeah, I'll watch another Batman thing, or I'll read another Batman run of comics is the sort of psychological warfare that he has to go through on a personal level. I find that fascinating. And simple short answer, I think that all of the villains in Batman are the coolest, most interesting villains that are written for any comic book. Any. Like,
yes.
that is a bold statement, but the Batman villains are, I want to say, especially for something that came out in the 40s, to have them be so multidimensional, not just I'm a bad guy or girl doing bad stuff for the sake of it. All of and getting to know all of those origin stories, I just think that's what keeps me going back to Batman.
Yeah.
Psychological, the villains are interesting and multidimensional, and also Batman music. That's the big. I mean, the Batman music.
I mean, when you said that, the Danny Elfman theme just kind of starts.
Yeah. It's so good.
Yeah.
So same answer for you. It was a question for you. What keeps you, or what keeps people going back to Batman?
Well, I'm going to start right where you left off with like the music. The fact that the character has been rebooted so many times recently, and that the music has to keep up with him, and it somehow has to be different while still being Batman. And
which is really
Hans Zimmer
challenging.
himself.
That's a really challenging feat, you know?
Hans Zimmer himself had to reinvent Batman for Christopher Nolan's Dark Knight trilogy, and then he had to do it again for Batman versus Superman.
Yep.
So not 4 years later, 5 years later, he had to write a different Batman theme, and it has to have that. I mean, everybody knows what it is, that operatic, menacing, but with tinges of heroism.
Yes. Heavy hero. That's like what I think of, like.
Yeah.
And I think that something too is, as we're chatting about this, like, you know, in the comics, like, Batman retires and then goes back into being Batman so many times, and I think that's something that's very relatable as well.
Yeah.
It's just as a human being being like.
Yeah, totally it is.
Yeah.
That's actually a great point. I hadn't thought about it, because we always laugh about, with superheroes in general, when they reach that moment of, I'm not doing this anymore, and it's like, okay, you'll be back.
Yeah, I mean, you are.
But that really is human nature.
Sure.
But gosh, the music. I'm thinking of Danny Elfman and The Dark Knight, obviously, and then I haven't listened through Michael Giacchino's full score yet for it. But
I listened to it a couple days ago.
You're spoiling your dinner, Alyssa.
I am. I couldn't help it. I had a long run, and I really wanted to be running to that music. And
yes.
Wow. And speaking of someone who really understands how to maintain the flavor of something with making it new and interesting and unique, Michael Giacchino for president of that organization.
Yes.
Because that man, gosh, first of all, he's just a good writer. First and foremost, he's a good writer.
He writes good themes, like themes that you can remember. I think maybe that's the one knock on Marvel outside of
we've
Alvin
chatted about this a
Silvestri.
little bit.
Yeah.
There's not any super recognizable.
But the Giacchino, Alan Silvestri, duh. Like all the Avengers
Sure,
stuff,
sure.
yes. And Captain America, he did all of that.
Mm-hmm.
And then Michael Giacchino, I would probably say Doctor Strange.
Yeah.
That's probably the most recognizable. I don't know. Spider-Man,
And he
maybe.
just said Spider-Man, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, he
Totally.
just he understands how to do that so well, which if, coming down the line, he is kind of the new Star Wars guy, which
Mhm.
we've talked about that potentially being the way it's going because his Rogue One score was
It's just so
freaking
good.
amazing. Freaking amazing. Well, should we head into our little Batman class and learn some basic Batman stuff?
Let's talk Batman.
All right, let's frickin' do it. All right, so we said the character originally appeared in Detective Comics number 27. He was created by Bob Kane and Bill Finger, and he was so popular in that storyline that his own series began publication in 1940, and basically since 1940, at least 2 Batman comics a month have come out.
That's crazy.
Isn't that wild?
That's crazy.
Also, good to note that in his very own series, Robin appeared for the first time. So it was Batman and Robin the Boy Wonder. Originally launched with a quarterly publication, and then it became bi-monthly through the late 50s, and has since September of 2011, the New 52, which is the new-ish run of DC Comics, rebooted the continuity. In this new timeline, the original Batman series ended and was relaunched with a new first issue. So that's something that's pretty common in comic books and is sort of a way for them to, whatever you want to call it, retcon, get rid of certain stories or backstories that they're like, we don't find that useful or relevant anymore since it began in 1940. So there were going to be some things that were shifted there, obviously. In 2016, DC began its second relaunch of its entire new line of titles called DC Rebirth, and continued the continuity from the New 52. Boop, boop, boop. So here's some of the first appearances that I was telling you about in these characters that, not only were big characters in Batman stories, but then became big characters for DC in general. The Joker appeared in the very first issue of Batman in the spring of 1940. Same as Catwoman. Alfred Pennyworth, Batman's butler and pal, appeared for the first time in number 16 in May of 1943. Deadshot, who we know recently from Suicide Squad, appeared for the first time in 1950. Mr. Freeze in 1959. Batgirl.
I can't believe he was that early too.
I know, isn't that wild?
Like, if anybody's watched the I'll get to Mr. Freeze. Like I need 5 minutes on Mr.
Yeah,
Freeze.
we need time for him.
Okay.
Batgirl, Betty Kane appeared in 1961. Poison Ivy in 1966. Ra's al Ghul, who is the leader of the League of Assassins, appeared in 1971. He became a big character standalone, but also within the Green Arrow's storylines. And probably one of the most famous current characters who originated in Batman is Harley Quinn, who appeared in 1993. There are, you could honestly pick up any Batman run and have yourself a good time as far as comics go.
Sure.
But these are some that I have really liked, and several of these have been major influences on the films that we've seen in the last 20 years. So Flashpoint Batman is actually a storyline within the Flash's journey, but if you are interested in the Flash or care about him at all, and you also like Batman, I would recommend reading this before seeing the new Flash film, because I think that might be where we're going.
Interesting.
Yeah, essentially, Barry runs back in time to fix an event, and he breaks the whole timeline and creates this alternate world called Flashpoint, where the people that he knows normally in his life don't know him, and there are lots of different, I don't want to say variants, but different people in the roles that he doesn't know them in. So Michael Keaton, there you go.
Yeah.
Batman the Cult, which is a huge influence on The Dark Knight, the Christopher Nolan series. It's basically, I would say this is Batman at his most psychologically vulnerable. He's kidnapped by Deacon Blackfire and cultists, and he's submitted to all this torture and brainwashing, and it's freaking dark and freaking awesome. Dark Knight Returns is another really famous run that I've read, written by Frank Miller and illustrated by Miller and Klaus Janson. And it tells this alternative story of Bruce Wayne, who's 55 and returns from retirement to help Gotham City yet again. And we've got returns of really classic villains like Two-Face and the Joker. And this is that's the one where he kicks Superman's butt. So that's a fun time.
And I distinctly remember the Comic-Con when they announced Batman versus Superman and how nuts everybody went because of the presentation at that panel, and a couple of lines were quoted. Nobody knew this movie was happening, and they quoted what Batman says to Superman as he's holding his broken body, and I remember how nuts everybody went, and then the disappointment that
oh geez.
Anyway,
so that's a very, very abridged version of comic history, but cool to know some of those things about Batman and the other characters as we're going into this.
Well, and since we're on the subject of comics, and we're talking about how this all leads into our new Batman film, the talk is that the Matt Reeves' The Batman is based heavily on Batman Year 2, which is a sequel, and you mentioned Frank Miller's
Dark Knight Returns.
Frank Miller in general, and then his Year 1 comic is one of the most famous and revolutionary Batman comics. But the idea of this new one being Year 2 of Batman is established, but he's still very early on in his tenure, and it might make him a bit more volatile and vulnerable to psychological attack, and Year 2 really plays that up. He's hunting the Riddler. I mean, he's hunting it, and it's very. I saw someone describe it as a Zodiac killer. Riddler as the Zodiac killer.
That totally checks out. Yeah.
Which is spooky. And then I remember Matt Reeves saying he was inspired by. He went back to the beginning. He went. They're going to really play up some of Batman's detective qualities, which
love that.
Which we are so used to in this day and age of Batman, him being a bruiser, and particularly, I do have to say, Ben Affleck's Batman so far has been the most physically imposing and ruthless, and that we've almost kind of gotten away from, Batman Master Detective. You got that a little bit with Michael Keaton and Val Kilmer, Val Kilmer probably more than the others. So that'll be interesting to see him solve mysteries.
Yeah, for sure.
Scooby-Doo this shit.
Yes, speaking of being a detective, and it's not really that much of a stretch, but as I said, I listened to the score, the soundtrack
No,
on
you
my run.
pieced the movie together, didn't you?
I
You
didn't.
sick-
No, I
Okay.
didn't piece it too much, but there is a really famous comic run, and I believe that they've done an animated series of Batman Long Halloween.
Mm-hmm.
And the very first track on the soundtrack is called Can't Fight City Halloween.
Great.
So, yeah, they're going to pull from,
Yes.
just as Nolan did, he pulled from, 4 or 5 really famous comic runs
Yes.
to make this meaty trilogy. I think we're gonna get lots of things from lots of different comic runs, but
Totally.
that had me excited. Like if we're starting this story on Halloween, like I don't know, there's something really thrilling about that.
Yeah. No. It does play up to the whole. The more I think about it now, just from what we've pieced together from the trailers, the Riddler as a Zodiac killer or a Jigsaw.
Yeah, and if
kind
like
of,
like the very first kill and riddle from the Riddler comes out like Halloween night, and then that is sort of like the launching off point for this. Ooh, scary.
Yeah.
Or a series of murders throughout the city that he, and they haven't even started really piecing together that it's the same. I don't know. I'm really excited about this new movie. I know not everyone is, but that's always the way it is with anything like this, especially with character that's been around for so long. You're not ever going to please everyone. But
No, and I talked about the music, being something that constantly refreshes my appreciation for Batman, but more broadly, I think it's the fact that we do get so many different versions of him that play up a specific trait of his.
Yeah. Do you have a favorite Batman?
I don't think I've ever answered the question out loud, honestly, because my favorite movie, and it's cliche at this point to say, is Dark Knight.
Well, that's
but-
not
but-
cliche. It's so good.
But I honestly think that's one of the best movies I've ever seen, period. Like,
Yeah.
it does what a lot of movies in that genre haven't done for me, which is really make the list of that is first-rate filmmaking, period.
Yeah, take the fact that you're dealing with like comic book characters and that type of story completely out of it. Just as a movie, it's such a good movie.
Yes. Yes. So in terms of Batman, I really, really liked Christian Bale, probably more than he liked his own performance. And he talks about how ill-equipped he felt when he was next to Heath Ledger. Oh my God.
Oh,
Stroke.
yeah. Heath.
Apologies.
I'm like, are you talking about
No,
another
I
Batman?
had a stroke.
Heath Ledger. It's okay.
No, next to Heath Ledger, he said, I feel like I'm really not doing a great job. And it's like, oh my God. I mean, come on now.
Yeah,
Come on now.
that goes to show you just how brilliantly the villains of Batman are written.
Yes.
If the title character is feeling overwhelmed or not like they're at the same level as the villain, I mean, I'm sure all of them have felt that way.
But that's why it worked. Like, someone needs to tell Christian Bale, is like, whatever feelings you were having, those translated on screen, and it was real fun to watch. You felt real ill-equipped to deal with what you were.
Which he should. I mean,
Precisely.
He torments him.
Yes.
He torments him. So that's exactly right.
So I do have a ton of respect for Christian Bale's. We talked very briefly a couple of days ago that I really liked Ben Affleck's Bruce Wayne, and I'm making a distinction between Batman and Bruce, and
sure.
I thought he's very well equipped to be Bruce, and I'm glad we'll get to see him do it, one more time in The Flash. Next to maybe my favorite Batman, Michael Keaton.
Yeah.
I think it is Michael Keaton, and I don't think it used to be, but the more I've seen Michael Keaton do other things,
Mm-hmm.
I think it increased my appreciation for his Batman, and I'm so excited to see him get to don the cowl again
I
and be Batman where Michael Keaton is in life.
Yeah. Yeah. Which is just super exciting. And we talked about this, when we were doing our like Boba Fett chats, but how amazing is it that we're getting these kind of stories?
Right.
Like the fact that like a Tamara Morrison and a Michael Keaton are getting to still be not still, just be these characters at the age that they are, because
Right.
generally speaking, we don't see that in films. We see it in the comic books all the freaking time. You see the
Oh yeah.
heroes, if they are able to age, we see them age, and we see them come to grips with what that looks like and how that works with their families, and it's very exciting. I never ever thought we'd get to see Michael Keaton back.
No, and really, it goes back to a point we've made in previous episodes about the needlessness of comparing Marvel and DC, when in reality, they are kind of encouraging one another to give us these stories. Like, oh, you're doing multiverse? Well, that gives us license to do Flashpoint. And the idea of two Batmen in the same movie isn't outlandish anymore. And,
no.
Yeah, but I think Michael Keaton is probably...
He's your fave.
He's probably out there, but I think Christian Bale is very close. And honestly, I already feel guilty about my initial reaction to Robert Pattinson being cast.
You felt weird about it?
Yeah, I was, and this was almost 3 years ago now, I think. But I have not seen the movie. I haven't really seen that many clips from it. I already regret my negative initial response.
Yeah, I'm excited to see him in this part. I'm going into it like excited and hopeful. I'm not sure. I'm not sure where he will measure next to those other guys, but like you said, it doesn't really make any sense to do that comparing thing, because they're just going to be different. They're different guys. They're very different storylines. Like, even it feels like weird to me to like compare like Michael Keaton and Christian Bale, because they're just in completely different films in completely different styles. And yes, it still is Batman, but like we know from the comic world, yes, we've had Bruce Wayne, we've had this same guy, but he's taken on many different flavors and many different versions of this same character. So it's
well, and just going off of what we know of Robert Pattinson as an actor, I am expecting, not to put an expectation, but I am expecting maybe the most emotionally complex Batman.
Yeah. I can see that.
Just based on his work and what he gravitates towards.
Mm-hmm.
And I pulled up an interview he did back in January on the question of Batman killing, or his rule his rule in modern times not to kill, and how problematic that is for him. But he had an interesting quote about it. He said, there's this rule with Batman: he must not kill. It can be interpreted in two ways. Either he only wants to inflict the appropriate punishment, or he wants to kill, and his self-control prevents him from doing so. It goes on to say that Pattinson takes note of what Bruce is thinking when he chases criminals, and he says it is impossible to think that he does not take pleasure in it.
Yeah.
And I imagine he goes on to say, I imagined it from the rehearsal of the first fight. I thought it was funnier. Something in him just wanted to slit that guy's throat. I told myself that he spends his night chasing criminals. It is impossible that he doesn't take pleasure in it. He suffers, and it is a desire that overwhelms him. I'm sure in his first fight, he manages to convince himself that every guy in front of him is one of the ones who killed his mother.
Yeah.
He lives a criminal life, but without committing crimes. I think that's the most beautifully
That's exactly it. Yeah. Yeah, and and just what you described about him, that like teeter-tottering thing of like, oh, well, maybe I want to kill this person because I like to kill, or no, I'm doing it because they're a bad person. And do both of those things exist at the same time? Can they exist at the same time? What does that mean about him? Like, it's such a fascinating character in that way. I can't get over how I keep coming back to this because I've been reading a lot of Green Arrow and watching the Arrow series, and he's got this one villain who is so like in his head and 5 steps ahead of him at every turn, and ultimately what he wants is the Green Arrow to admit that he likes to kill, and he wants to watch him decline upon that realization and have that be the thing that completely like ruins him. It's so dark.
Well, and that's what made the Nolan movies so great is all the Joker wanted was Batman to be like him, to kill somebody. And Bruce nearly does it several times. I mean, he doesn't even kill Bane. He had the opportunity, and it's one of the greatest full circle lines, I think, is from Dark Knight Rises, where early in the movie, after Bane has shattered his back, he tells him, after Gotham is ashes, you have my permission to die. And then flash forward to the end of that movie when Batman kicks his ass and says, you tell me where the bomb is, and then you have my permission to die. But I think it's so interesting that he's not going to be the one that does it, even after everything these people put him through.
Yeah.
And of course, Batman has killed in canon. I just think we're in a very interesting age of him facing even more dangerous people and having to fight the urge to kill them.
That's way more of an interesting take on someone. And it humanizes him in a very, different way.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, and a lot of these vigilante characters in comics go through that, where they decide, like, I'm not killing. I'm not going to kill. But then they're up against these truly evil people or, creatures who are killing everyone that they can.
Yep.
And how do you justify that? It's like, well, I've decided that I'm not going to kill. I've decided that I'm more than that. But I know that if I kill this person, that what's going on will end.
Right.
And that's just such an interesting psychological idea. And all from a comic book.
And all from a comic book. I mean, folks, if you haven't picked up comic books, they really are. If you look past the idea of what you think they are very instructive about the world we live in, and they are a direct reflection of it.
Yeah.
Just with souped up characters and scenarios, but
yeah, absolutely. And they're in these fantastical situations, but at the heart and the guts of what they're doing, it's all very basic human struggle. And yeah, so
modern mythology. We've talked about the concept of just modern mythology. This is the pantheon of heroes. But speaking of the canon, we can jump down the rabbit hole of the films,
Let's do
which
it.
I suspect is how a lot of people
know Batman the most.
At least people in my life know Batman. It's through the movies, and as I said at the beginning, the first film was, yeah, in fact, a serial of films, 1943, and it was followed up by a Batman Robin 15-episode series in 1949, where Robert Lowry played Batman. And then most famously for perhaps our parents' generation, you had the Batman television series with Adam West, which then spawned the feature-length movie, which I hadn't seen most of the television series, but I had seen this movie, Batman, the movie, 1966, which brought back most of the TV cast, which is just all of the who's who of villains. You had Cesar Romero was the Joker. Burgess Meredith was the Penguin. Frank Gorshin was the Riddler. Lee Merriweather, she wasn't Catwoman in the series, but she stepped into the film, and just an amazing piece of cinema, that movie.
And of course we got that 1960s surf rock Batman with the background singers absolutely kill me.
Just
Batman. It's like, I'm like, did you guys hire like 13-year-old girls to do this session? Like, it's so funny to me, but hey, it was a massive hit. And
it was
that groovy 60s
my parents
surf rock. Yeah, my dad loved that show.
Yeah.
So.
Oh yeah. And that series really introduced a lot of Batman. I mean, almost the whole pantheon of Batman villains into live action. We then get into kind of the beginning of our generation and what we remember growing up with truly as kids. And that starts with Batman in 1989 by Tim Burton, directed by Tim Burton, with Michael Keaton as Batman and Jack Nicholson as the Joker.
Yeah, I recently rewatched that, and I could not get over how beautiful all the scenic painting on that was, and how brilliant of an idea to do something like that, to have it be grounded in live action reality, but then the background of everything still feels like a comic book. That is so freaking genius. Like, Gotham looks like it's pulled right out of a comic book, but you're seeing, Jack Nicholson and Michael Keaton beating the crap out of each other and all of this stuff underneath it. It just is, it's so good. It's so good.
Well, and this was, I mean, granted, Tim Burton's prime lasted much longer than his tenure in Batman, but this was kind of right in the middle of it's Tim Burton time. So Nightmare Before Christmas and
Scissorhands was year
Edward
before,
Scissorhands,
right?
but just that he has an unmistakable imagery that he likes to convey, and
sort
and
of
the way,
whimsical darkness.
Yes, whimsical. That's a perfect way to put it. Whimsical darkness.
Because it's always like dark, but not in like a scary dark.
Yeah,
there's still like a whimsy to it, I suppose.
And Jack Nicholson's take on the Joker is still legendary. Really, it's just Jack Nicholson with clown makeup on, and that's enough.
Yeah. Yeah, I will never forget, and unfortunately, this is obviously, it's a very sad part of Batman history, but with the loss of Heath Ledger, and how he took him, he did an interview where he said that before they started filming, he took him to drinks or took him to lunch or something, and just said, as someone, and Jack Nicholson has played a lot of dark characters in his life, and just sort of pleaded with him to be very, very careful with this character.
Mm-hmm.
That it was, easy to be like, oh, it's a comic book character and it'll be fine, but to be very careful. And that just is it's so heartbreaking to go back and watch watch them and to have the knowledge that he really did try to warn him about it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure much else can be said about it. It's you have to have an escape route out of a character like that.
Yep.
You can't take him home with you.
No. I had a college professor who would always say, "Put away your toys."
Yes.
The second that you can, and that you're no longer working, put away your toys, because it will begin to bleed and seep into your real life, which it's not. It's not your real life. No,
and look, like, not to get too much into actor speak, but for those of you listening who kind of want to understand, every actor has whether it's depending on the character or just their overall process in general, has a different way of bringing characters to life, a technique, a process, a method, if you will. And I've personally always subscribed to the idea that it's real dangerous to use real memories all the time.
Yeah.
Or even most of the time, because it's just, that's, again, you put it perfectly, Alyssa. It's not, the character you're playing is not reality, so don't
let it become that.
You don't need to rummage in your own crap.
Yeah.
To empathize. But anyway.
For sure.
But a revolutionary performance from him.
Yeah.
And then Tim Burton would do a second film, Batman Returns, with Michael Keaton. This was Danny DeVito as the Penguin and Michelle Pfeiffer as Catwoman.
Have you seen the behind-the-scenes footage of her doing the whip?
Yes. Unbelievable.
That is incredible. If you don't know what I'm talking about right now, go and
unbelievable.
Or we'll put it in our Instagram stories or something. But yeah, Michelle Pfeiffer just like freaking learned how to be an incredible whip master.
I mean, unbelievable.
It's so great. And yeah, there's a behind the scenes video of her doing probably the most famous sequence in that film in one take.
Yes.
So it's amazing. We'll put it on our Instagram stories. Yeah, it's so cool.
So Tim Burton would part ways, and a few years later we had Batman Forever, which has to be noted. It is a continuation of Batman and Batman Returns.
It is, yes.
Even though they do look a bit different.
Feel very different. Mm-hmm.
But Joel Schumacher, rest in peace, he passed away in 2020. He took over and did Batman Forever, and that was Jim Carrey as the Riddler and Tommy Lee Jones as Two-Face.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, confession.
Do it.
I really like this movie.
It's a fun movie.
I really like both of them, even though the Riddler feels like Joker and
indeed
Two-Face is not Two-Face so much, but
but it's if you're gonna have it just be on its own, like don't, just like we've said, like don't compare it to other stuff. It's a fun movie. It's fun.
It is, and even though I'm not sure the interpretations really stack up, I do really enjoy Tommy Lee Jones and Jim Carrey as actors in general. They're very interesting and kind of unthinkable duo. Mm-hmm. So I enjoyed that. I will admit it. And I think that is the first Batman movie I saw. I saw that before, because that's right when I was five years old. So
yeah, you were young.
4 or 5. So even that's pretty young. But
definitely my first intro to Batman was the animated series.
Yeah,
that ran from 92 to 95.
And then didn't it get at a
and then it restarted again.
Right.
97, I want to say. Let me look it up here.
Yeah. Oh man.
Yeah, started back up again in 97.
And thank goodness it did, because you're absolutely right. That was the majority of Batman for us growing up. And in college, my roommate, Ben, who I've spoken of on this podcast before, he and I bought the entire box series of DVDs.
Amazing.
And we went through it again And at college level, we were like, how were we allowed to watch this?
I know, right? Yeah, the new Batman Adventures were 97 through 99.
Yeah.
And it picked up right where the animated series left off. The Batman animated series.
So that was it held up really
it's
well.
It's a lot darker. If you watch them in sequence too, the 93 to 95 and then 97 to 99 is like significantly darker.
Yeah.
Which I think is very telling, because I think that we went from like the Bronze Age into the New 52 during that time.
Mm-hmm.
So there was a big shift in the comics storytellings as well. So they were like, okay, we got to shift tonally for all the other entities.
And what was so great, and we played a variety of the Batman themes at the beginning of this episode, but that Danny Elfman lent his talents. And it is virtually the same.
It's the same theme, but
just extended outward. Probably a little more heroic than even the one in the movie. But so he did the theme for it, and then a composer named Shirley Walker would take over, and she's done a shit ton of TV, and she sadly passed away in the early 2000s, I think. But if you can, Apple Music has the entire animated series canon, and most of it is Shirley Walker, and she won Emmys for it. Like it's unbelievable music. So that was happening all during this time between Batman Returns and Batman Forever, and then Joel Schumacher's second go around, Batman and Robin. Why are you laughing, Alyssa? What's so funny about what I said?
It's a hilarious thing.
George Clooney plays the Dark Knight.
In case you forgot, which we
Chris
all
O'Donnell
tried to
plays
forget.
Robin, and Arnold Schwarzenegger plays Mr. Freeze, and Uma Thurman plays Poison Ivy.
Okay, another thing. We'll talk more about this in a second. It's like, it's fun how bad it is. That's all
I watched that movie a lot as a kid. I watched it a lot.
You loved it?
I think I did. I
did. I don't blame
Underlined.
You. I did see that movie in theaters, but then didn't see it again until college.
Oh, God.
And I had this weird, like, recovering memory situation as I was watching it. Like, I remember seeing it in theaters and, like, loving it and having a good time.
Yes.
And then I was watching it as, like, a, 20-year-old and being like,
oh, no.
What? Where is the plot? What's happening?
Why the puns?
There's so many puns.
Speaking
of puns, someone should compiled every single pun that Mr. Freeze did in that movie, and it's like a 3-minute compilation. Oh, I'll share that on Instagram too. It's so weird. I mean, to play devil's advocate here for a second, I think that movie does feel like a comic book.
Yeah.
Not necessarily like Batman comics.
You know what it felt like? It's like they took Adam West tone, slapped some of Tim Burton's imagery in there, because it is still a continuation of those movies.
Right.
These are all considered one after the other.
Yeah.
And then $100 million of product placement.
Yeah.
Like 5 minutes, no, not even 5 minutes in, like 3 minutes in, when Batman jumps in the Batmobile, we already have product placement. And then flash forward to like halfway through the movie where they're at some big auction. He pulls out like his American Express card.
Yeah. You're like, is this a commercial? What is
happening?
What is happening?
Batman just tried to pay for something with a credit card.
Oh, yeah. But, I mean, there are a lot of people who, even though it is considered perhaps the worst Batman movie ever.
And George Clooney has said as much. And I believe
some
Joel
people,
Schumacher has said as much.
some people still like it, and that's okay.
So this will blow your mind. So there were plans to obviously continue the series.
Of course.
And there was a film in development with Schumacher.
Okay.
What he self-described as a film that would have been darker and closer in tone to the first two films of the series, the Tim Burtons.
Mm-hmm.
It was tentatively called Batman Unchained.
Oh, okay. Which is a full comic arc.
Yes, right.
Mm-hmm.
It has the Scarecrow as the main villain.
Mm-hmm.
And Jack Nicholson was supposed to return as the Joker in a hallucination of some kind. The fear serum that the
Scarecrow uses. Mm-hmm.
It was going to have the Scarecrow, and then Harley Quinn was going to be in this film, but she was going to be portrayed as the Joker's daughter.
Okay, and not girlfriend. Interesting. Did they have? Was there any like casting leaks
Yes.
for that? Okay.
Yes. So
Who do
it
we
was
have?
it was George Clooney,
Okay.
Chris O'Donnell, and Alicia Silverstone back as Batwoman, or Batgirl, and Schumacher. And this is
Oh no.
this is rumored.
Okay.
He had offered the role of Scarecrow to Nicolas Cage.
Oh wow.
And he was originally supposed to be a cameo
Okay.
in Batman and Robin to then set up his appearance in this film.
I mean, I guess time when this movie came out in 97, that tracks. But oh my gosh, can you imagine a world in which we had Nicolas Cage as Scarecrow?
But he did allegedly go on to actually like offer somebody to play Scarecrow.
Okay.
And it was the musician Coolio.
What? Why?
And there's a this is from 2017. There's a Hollywood Reporter article where they talked to Coolio about this. And Coolio is in he has a cameo in Batman and Robin.
Yeah.
Very quickly, and I had forgot. He said he and Joel Schumacher didn't get along great, and the only reason I did is because they promised me the villain part in the following Batman.
Wow.
So we lived in a world where not only was Nick Cage courted to play Scarecrow, it was eventually going to go to Coolio.
That's insane. Were there any rumors of who Harley Quinn was going to be? Or who they were like looking at?
I don't know. I don't know. And then there was talk that Schumacher was like super interested in doing a year one thing. They pitched. Apparently, they pitched it to Warner Brothers to do a year one adaptation. And then there was another. He pitched another script. I believe it was a guy named Stephen Weiss. He penned a script called Batman Dark Knight, and it's spelled DARKNIGHT, which fine. But it was largely inspired by Dark Knight Returns, and which famously has Bruce Wayne giving up his career, and another one scrapped. And then originally the studio was like, what if we made a live action version of Batman Beyond?
Oh, okay.
Which was an animated series.
Yes.
If you're not familiar, that came
that
after
was,
Batman and
99 to 2001.
Yes. I have fond memories of watching that when I'd come home from basketball games on Saturday mornings.
Yeah. We had Kevin Conroy.
One Saturday morning.
Yeah, I loved One Saturday Morning.
That's what it was on.
Yeah, Kevin Conroy back in Bruce Wayne. So
yeah, cool. And he was he plays like 80-year-old Batman, like 80-year-old Bruce Wayne, and he mentors this young kid, and like this is like 2040 or whatever in Neo Gotham, and very interesting series. And actually, that is a series not only I wish they would bring back, but I wish I wish for that adaptation of Batman.
Yeah, that'd be cool. We haven't live action. Haven't seen anything like that.
That would be pretty neat.
HBO. That could be an HBO series.
Totally. They've gone all in on the DC stuff.
They certainly have.
I remember what the product placement was. I couldn't for the life of me remember at the beginning of Batman and Robin. It was OnStar.
Oh, OnStar.
He calls
he
calls Commissioner Gordon with OnStar.
That's right. Whoa, old tech alert.
He presses OnStar in the Batmobile.
Oh, no.
There's Commissioner Gordon.
Oh no.
There was supposed to be a Robin spinoff as well with Chris O'Donnell.
Sure.
It was canceled because obviously.
Because no. Wow.
But then there was, and this will get into territory that kind of strays away from Batman. But there was supposed to be a Batman versus Superman as far back as 1999. Alan Horn had talked about getting those two together. There was supposed to be a Superman in the mid 90s, and eventually the Tim Burton Batman canon was going to link up with Superman, and so there were attempts, and I think that's why it's so impressive what Marvel has done, is because nobody could figure out how to do something like this.
Well, yeah, because it's insane. It's insane.
And it requires just complete buy-in across all levels. But they mentioned a Batman versus Superman. I mean, get this. Christian Bale was approached to play Batman, and Josh Hartnett was offered the role of Superman.
Yeah, I mean,
nuts.
Late 90s. Yeah.
Pearl Harbor, man.
Whoa.
So
I kind of want to see that, though. Go back in time.
The multiverse.
Flash, run back, and let's make that movie.
But then we get to, in my opinion, the golden age of Batman. Batman Begins. Yep. Christopher Nolan.
Oh, I saw this movie in theaters 7 or 8 times.
Yeah.
Oh, so good. So good.
Yeah. As we've said, Christian Bale is Batman, and you get Liam Neeson as Ra's al Ghul. The League of Shadows, and what is so interesting about the Nolan trilogy, and we've mentioned this, is the fact that it's not as far-fetched as you'd think. The world this Batman inhabits is very close to post 9/11 America. Yep. And I was reading an interview way back when that Christopher Nolan did in the run-up to Dark Knight in 2008, where he discussed the Joker being a very interesting stand-in for terrorism and Al-Qaeda and just things that truly spooked us during that decade, and the overreach that is possible when trying to defend against threats like that. And it's borne out in that movie. You'll remember Lucius Fox, who is basically Batman's quartermaster, whoever. He supplies all the tech. And Bruce has built a machine that will triangulate signals from people's cell phones and computers and basically create a map of Gotham so he can track the Joker. And Lucius Fox tells him, I'll help you this one time, but I am out. I'm not doing this.
Yeah.
And it was just a very interesting portrayal and metaphor for the idea of surveillance and the Patriot Act and being able to listen in on people's phone calls and then going a step further, how do you deal with people who have already decided they don't care if they live or die?
Yeah.
That they literally just want to watch the world burn, as Alfred says. And that's the first time that I can remember where a Batman villain just says, if he was to be asked point blank, why are you doing this?
Mm-hmm.
He says something to the effect of, I'm like a dog chasing cars. I don't know what I'm going to do if I catch one. It's just, I just do things.
Yeah.
And that's horrifying. And it's unsatisfying to people, but that's the reality is sometimes you just can't explain it.
Mm-hmm.
And how do you moralize and how do you how do you respond to that? And especially if you've created the rule that you're not going to take a life here.
Mm-hmm.
So these movies were revolutionary, and and I think they do resonate because we do see it. They do reflect the fears of our day-to-day life. Bane, I know some of the criticism for Dark Knight Rises was, wow, this kind of felt like an apocalypse movie, and it just went like a step too far from Nolan's imagery. And Christopher Nolan said, no, it didn't. Because this was around the time of when, like, both here at home, where you had protests, like, really growing, like the real big populist movement growing, and then overseas you had the Arab Spring, and just all across the world, there's this rise in anarchy, and for someone to take advantage of that is a very real. I mean, open a history book, like it happens quite frequently, actually.
Right now.
I mean, turn on the news.
Yeah, we're living it.
And tell me somebody like Bane couldn't exist. And I honestly, and I said this to my friends when I saw that movie when I walked out, because all of the talk was about how Tom Hardy as Bane would follow up the Joker, and there's no way that movie could hold up to Dark Knight. I came out of that movie more spooked, I think, than Dark Knight. I appreciated
I think
the
so, too.
performances
Yeah.
maybe in more Dark Knight, but Dark Knight Rises was scary.
It was scary. Yeah.
But Nolan managed to make three movies, I would argue, that are of three different genres entirely, with one through line. The first one being the obvious, the origin film, a bit more of a detective film, kind of a coming of age.
Sure.
Dark Knight was a mob movie. I mean, it was The Godfather and The Departed, maybe in the same.
Yeah, scary city crime.
Right.
Stuff.
Psychological. And then Dark Knight Rises was an absolute disaster movie. Like, it was you could call it apocalyptic. I mean, it's.
Yeah, for sure.
And the fact that they can all coexist, and that Christian Bale's turn as Batman, that whole arc is absolutely stunning. And I was a big fan of Gary Oldman as Gordon, the best Gordon we've ever had, I think.
The best. I mean, the fact that Michael Caine,
Michael Caine, my God.
Michael Caine is Alfred? What?
I mean, Alfred got to be a main character because it was Michael
Caine. Yeah. Yeah, it's those movies are amazing. They still hold up.
Yes.
If you've not ever seen those, I would recommend watching those before we go into this new Batman movie.
Yeah, I definitely think tonally the Matt Reeves film will be a bit closer to.
Yeah, at least that's what it feels like from the trailers.
It sure
and
looks
from
like
the
it.
footage that we've seen from the actors that they've put in these roles. It seems like that's the flavor of Batman that we're getting, which I'm excited about.
Well, and because we've talked about it too before, I'm not gonna to sit on this subject too long. But then we have the DC extended universe, which kicked off with Man of Steel the summer after Dark Knight Rises, and there was a lot of talk because Christopher Nolan was the executive producer on Man of Steel. there was questions whether his Batmans were going to, based on the way Dark Knight Rises ended with Joseph Gordon-Levitt finding the Batcave, and it left you on this note of, what?
Mm-hmm.
There were questions whether Batman would coexist with Henry Cavill's Superman, and eventually I think Nolan made the right decision upon kind of seeing what the plan was and said, no, like, that's his own world.
That's a different thing. Mm-hmm.
And I think he was wise to do that. But the first time Batman shows up again in this expanded DC universe, which is a mirror of the MCU, was Batman versus Superman with Ben Affleck. And this was Zack Snyder, who has come under great fire recently for all sorts of stuff. But he's kind of, it's not even, it's not Zack Snyder who's come under fire. It's more his counterpart, who Joss Whedon.
Yeah, correct.
Who's also dipped his foot in Marvel and made the first Avengers movie quite successfully.
Mm-hmm. Very talented person. Maybe not so good of a person, but
we won't waste time here on the saga that completely derailed Justice League, and then gave birth to Zack Snyder's realized version of it. But because we're just talking Batman here, but so we see very dark, a much more sadistic Batman in these films, which there was kind of a disconnect, I think, between Ben Affleck's performance as Bruce and then how unrelenting he was as Batman. And I'm not sure it quite gelled.
I'm not sure if that was the way it was written or directed or both, or an interpretation on his end.
Yeah.
Not exactly sure, but something, just like you said, something didn't exactly add up there.
And I know Ben Affleck was having issues in his own life, and then he talked about how brutally unpleasant it was to be playing that role, which is sad.
Yeah, which is, it.
You never want to hear that.
No.
But as we mentioned, he will be making his return in The Flash, which will be a very interesting. I don't know if he and Michael Keaton will interact. That'll be fascinating. But this is the question I have now that we're kind of near the end of the film portion of this, is that so Michael Keaton is playing the Batman from his time and his universe being the Tim Burton universe.
Yep.
Have we opened the door to maybe go back down that route at some point?
I mean, gosh, it's possible.
I mean, the door is open.
If we're having a 50, in 50s to 60s Bruce Wayne, which actually I think Michael Keaton's even older than that. He just looks really good. I think I need to look it up now. He's older than I think he is. But I mean, are we going to get some Batman stories when he's that age? Could be.
Yeah, just set in his world with that imagery, and that would be pretty interesting, I think.
Yeah. I mean, I certainly wouldn't be mad about it.
But
we are living in the age of nostalgic reboots or reimaginings, have you?
Well, and think about it. So The Flash is supposed to come out this year, and we're going to have 3 Batmans in the same year.
Mm-hmm.
And all 3 of them exist in different realities. So this Matt Reeves franchise, and I do say franchise because So the Batman will be the first of his creations, but
Not exactly
they've
sure
already
where
talked
I know that there's talks of other things. I don't know if it
of
will
a
be
sequel.
on
And then
HBO specifically. Maybe they're going to give him a series. I don't know, but this is not. Yeah, this is not a one-off. Or at least I know that it's. They don't hope it's a one-off. You know.
well, and they've announced a TV series that Matt Reeves is executive producing, and it's going to be a Gotham City police drama.
Oh, great.
Set in his Gotham City.
Did you
And
watch Gotham?
I never made. I know how it ends. I missed some part in the middle
Okay.
because this was on during college, I think.
2014 to 2019. Yeah.
Okay, so right at the end of college, and then. So for the most part, I did. Did you?
I didn't know. I haven't seen any of it.
It's give some of it a watch. It's
Yeah. No, I'm definitely down. I'm making my way through the DC stuff, HBO and CW wise. So it's on my list. I will watch it. I mean the cast is great. That's a great
Yes.
It's a great freaking cast.
But this spin-off series will be focused around the Gotham City Police Department, and Colin Farrell will be playing the Penguin.
Yeah.
In it as well. So he looks unrecognizable, by the way.
I cannot believe that's him.
Unbelievable.
Yeah. Super cool.
And I believe they said a couple of years ago that Pattinson was signed on to do 3 movies. So
I mean, it wouldn't surprise me.
They might as well run with him.
Yeah.
I think. And then to further confuse people who are like, I don't know what the hell is going on, then you have the standalone Joker film, Todd Phillips' Joker film, which came out a couple years with Joaquin Phoenix as Joker. But they've talked about doing a sequel to that, what world does that exist in? Who is Batman in that one? Does that end up connecting to Matt Reeves, or is that its own thing? So, like, what DC has done, and I actually think it might be a good model going forward, considering they've tried and kind of failed at matching the synergy of Marvel, is just doing these small little pockets.
I think it's great. I think it's great. It's less pressure, and then you can just focus on making good movies. You don't have to worry about this insane through timeline thing.
Yes.
Which Marvel is its own special freak of nature in that way. And it's not an easy thing to do. It's not It's not even a thing that I think, 15 years ago, if somebody had said, someone is going to connect 20 plus, and now we're getting into even further craziness, but that many movies will be connected. Not television shows, not TV episodes. That many movies.
Yes.
There's nothing else like it. So.
I changed my answer on my favorite Batman.
Oh, okay.
Kevin Conroy.
All right. I support
it's Kevin
that.
Conroy.
I support that.
It's the voice of Batman.
Yeah,
because as you stated, like he was our Batman.
Yeah, he was.
And I'm thinking very specifically about. Did you ever see The Mask of the Phantasm?
Mm-hmm.
The animated film?
Yeah.
Great animated movie. And then I mentioned Mr. Freeze. So there was another. It was straight to video in '98 called Sub-Zero. That pitted Batman against Mr. Freeze. And Mr. Freeze's actual story, I'm not talking about Arnold Schwarzenegger. I'm talking about, like, this is the animated, probably where he best exists, to be honest. And it's the whole tragedy of Mr. Freeze is his wife is dying of, he has basically put her on life support. She's dying of some rare disease that he's been trying to save her from, and over the course of his experiments, he ends up effing himself, and he's voiced by a guy named Michael Ansara, and I think he's one of the most beautifully tragic figures in Batman, and that there's this mutual respect between the two of them while they are completely at odds, and it always ends with Batman saying, "Victor, I'm going to do whatever I can for your wife," and you just got to stop the insanity. And you get to see more compassionate Batman,
That's cool.
which I think we've missed a bit as he becomes hardened, and I think that's an aspect I hope we get to see a bit of. I suspect we might not see a ton of that in Matt Reeves. It doesn't look super compassionate necessarily.
Not
More tortured than anything.
particularly.
But
Yeah.
um,
He's the best brooder we know. Batman.
yes.
What a guy.
And then if you are a fan of Kevin Conroy, and then we haven't mentioned Mark Hamill as the Joker.
Oh my gosh.
Which has basically been Mark Hamill's claim to fame since Luke Skywalker has been being the voice of the Joker.
Mm-hmm.
They are at odds in the video game series Arkham, the Arkham video games. If you're not familiar with those stories, I'm not going to recite the whole story to you now, but it's some of the best Batman storytelling we've had, period.
And the music is amazing. Do you know who did the music for that?
I don't remember off the top of my head.
I'm going to look it up because I need to credit them.
The whole production, the script, the storytelling.
Yeah, I've not ever played those games because, well, as Dino and Daniel know, I've for someone that likes pew pew stuff, I don't do extremely well with like violence and gore. So I don't generally gravitate towards those type of video games. But I need to know who wrote this. Martin Lancaster.
Well done.
Yes, we used one of his themes for the little music montage that we put at the beginning of this episode.
Yep.
Amazing. It does exactly what we were talking about.
Yes.
Creating something that feels like Batman but is fresh and new and interesting.
And most of, if not all of, Batman's arch nemeses show up in some way, shape, or form, and the interpretations of all of them, they're true to the characters, but they're very different than maybe you'd expect. And it's so terrific and thrilling how they're all incorporated. And
the narrative. That's what I've heard. Both you and Daniel have said. Like the overall narratives of these games is incredible.
Yes, it takes some of the Tim Burton imagery, takes some of the Nolan sensibility in terms of kind of what's going, the anarchy, kind of what's going on, and then has the voices of Kevin Conroy and Mark Hamill, and it's really terrific.
That's so awesome.
But we have a new Batman movie on Thursday.
You're going on Thursday?
Going on Thursday.
I can't go until Friday, but I'll be going on Friday.
Okay. I'll go radio silent. It's going to be a long one, folks. I think it's like 2 hours, 58 minutes or something like that.
Yeah.
So don't get the big gulp.
Do not. Or, be ready to sit on the aisle so you can run out and run back in really fast. But yeah, it's I'm excited.
Yeah, I'm really curious. I think that's the word. Curious. Yeah. I have great curiosity for this Batman, and may this be like DC's like, okay, we're gonna lean on Batman going forward.
Yeah.
Because I think that's the formula for them.
For sure.
But
well,
do you have any final thoughts on
honestly,
the Caped Crusader?
I don't think that I do. I'm excited for this movie.
Yep.
And the music is awesome. I've listened to all the music so far. So that's if that alone is the best thing from it, I'm good. Seriously. Honestly, because it's beautiful and amazing. So, but I have high hopes, and yeah, I can't wait to unwrap all of that on our next episode. Any final thoughts for you today?
No, I'm going to keep my predictions to myself because I don't have many of them, honestly.
Yeah.
And having been more a consumer of visual Batman than comic Batman, I know people have far better educated guesses than I do. So I'm kind of going in fairly blind. So I'm looking forward to.
That's fun.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that. We don't get to do that often.
Yeah, the plot line
that
they have online for it is really very basic. So it's just like, the Riddler is messing with Batman, basically.
Great. Sign me up.
Yeah. All right, cool. Well, thanks for making your way through all of this, Batman history and stuff. Hope you learned something or had a good time. I know I did. This is Inside the Tauntaun, a podcast in the multiverse of fandom. I'm Alyssa Simmons.
I'm Dino again.
May the force be with you.
Always.
See you.
Inside the Tauntaun podcast. Please like and subscribe.